Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BFI Film Academy's November Lab. My name is Alex, and I'm the Film Academy Festival and Events Manager. And today, we'll teach you everything that you need to know about running a set as a director. The session will be hosted by Rowan Woods, who is an independent editorial consultant, programmer, and moderator. She works at the British Council, where she advises major international festivals on UK projects, and she's also series programmer at the BFI London Film Festival. She previously worked on many of the BBC key film programs and as a development executive at BBC Films. But just before I hand over to Rowan to introduce you to our lovely guest, Dan, today, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping things that you need to know about today's session. So first of all, just to let you know that we have our BFI Film Academy team working behind the scenes today. And my colleague Noel will be managing the chat box today. So if you haven't yet, I know many of you have said hi already, but if you haven't done so, feel free to say hello, introduce yourselves in the chat box. And also, if you have any more generic questions about the BFI, about Film Academy or our lab series, then you can ask those questions of Noel in the chat box. But just one little thing to tell you is that by default, the chat box will be sent to send your message only to hosts and panelists. So make sure, I see a lot of you are saying hi everyone, but just to hosts and panelists. So you need to change that to in the bottom of the chat box to everyone, and then everyone will be able to see your message and Noel will be able to respond. And if you do decide to use the chat box today, I just want to remind you to please be respectful to our guests today and also to each other. So please don't use offensive language. Please don't share any personal information. And for your reference, we've shared our digital events code of conduct with you in the ticketing email that was sent to you if you want to refer back to that. If you guys want to talk to each other, if you potentially want to find collaborators for your projects, or if you just want to share your work that you've done, we've started a Facebook networking group actually for you to do just that. And Noel will shortly post the link to that. He's just done it now, Facebook networking group in the chat. Feel free to join the group and share links to your work and meet each other that way. However, if you have any questions today for Dan, our guest, then please put those questions in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. So please don't put them in the chat box, put them in the Q&A box. And my colleague Diana will work on monitoring those questions throughout, so you can start popping them now. And we'll allocate about 20 minutes or so at the end of the session to try and go through as many of your questions as possible. So you can start putting them in there now. It's great to see how many of you have joined the session. I'm sure you'll have many questions for Dan. And the very final thing to say is that today's session will be recorded and will be uploaded to the BFI YouTube channel this week. So if there is anything that you missed today or just want to watch the session again, don't worry, you will be able to, we'll post across Film Academy social channels as soon as the recording is up on YouTube and available to watch. And so that's it for me. I'm now going to hand over to Rowan to introduce Dan to you. Enjoy the session, everyone. And welcome, Rowan.
Hi everyone, my name's Rowan. I've seen a lot of you before. Nice to see you again. And I'm going to be hosting this evening's Festival Lab. I'm going to be moderating this session with Emmy Award-winning director Dan Attias. Dan has been working as a director for nearly 4 decades and has definitely directed episodes of your favourite TV shows, whether it's The Sopranos, The Wire, The Americans, my personal favourite, Homeland, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Buffy, Friday Night Lights, True Detective, 6 Feet Under. The list goes on, and it's a really incredible body of work that includes some of the best shows of the 21st century and those that have really changed the way that we think about TV. Dan's recently written a book called Directing Great Television: Inside TV's New Golden Age, in which he shares many fantastic insights into the creative process and how to be a leader on set. And we'll be talking about directing sort of series television, running the set, working with actors, and many other things. Please welcome Dan.
Well, hi. Hi. Thank you so much,
Hi,
Rowan.
nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Now, before we get stuck in, just a couple of bits of housekeeping for everyone watching. We've got about sort of 70 minutes for this masterclass. I've got lots of questions for Dan. I know Dan's got lots of great wisdom to impart. We'll probably do about 50 minutes together and then we'll open up for everyone else. So do keep popping your questions in the chat box. I know you're all experts at Zoom by now, but we're really, really keen to have that opportunity for you to be able to ask your questions of someone so experienced. So Dan, you've been working in directing television during a period of incredible growth and expansion of TV as an art form. And I think we must be in the second, third, fourth, fifth golden age of television now. And like many directors, you started out wanting to be a film director. And, you know, there was that sort of old perceived hierarchy between film and television, with film sort of being the real kind of grown up, serious, creative job. Tell us how your thinking on that has changed over the years.
Well, you're right, Rowan. I did start out thinking my ambition was to become a feature film director. My first job was a feature film. I don't know if any of you guys out there may have seen it. Stephen King's Silver Bullet came out in the mid-'80s, a werewolf movie. And at that time, you know, television was really not regarded as a terribly creative place to work. And so while I was trying to kind of line up another feature, I kind of accepted TV work as just a kind of way to stay busy and to maybe develop myself as a director. And maybe here's a good time just to mention, because I know a lot of you folks out there are really interested in getting started and developing yourselves. And I just want to put a plug in for make stuff. You know, it's good to stay busy. That was my plan. I didn't know it was going to lead to my love for working in television, but I would just say, you know, if you want to direct, you don't learn how to direct by not directing. You learn how by doing it. So, you know, with your iPhones or whatever else, you guys are all able now to make films and edit them yourself. And that's really where I learned, and where I think you'll learn and develop your, you know, your creative voice. But in my case, anyway, I started directing television, and I happened to, and I was very picky about the next feature, and I thought I'd develop my own material, and I was very hard on myself in writing. So that just kind of kept getting deferred. I had a few opportunities to go into development. That was at the time, they probably still do call it development hell, because you're just, you know, it doesn't get greenlit until, you know, everybody signs off on it. So a project can take years in the kind of evolution. And there was something great about television, which is it happens. Boom, you're hired. You know, you just got to plunge in. You get much less time to prepare it. You often don't even see your script until a few days before you start your relatively short prep period. And then you shoot it, and then it comes out, and people talk about it. And so that was exhilarating to me. And I was working on some really good shows. And then along about the late 90s, something really, there was kind of a big change in the overall quality of shows. And I was involved in one of the very first episodes of The Sopranos. And it was actually the first episode after the pilot. And that really started what people call the second golden age of television, where all these great shows started getting generated. And I just fell in love with that process. And because the material was so good, and what I loved about television directing also is I got to enter so many different worlds. Because, you know, as the director, one of the things I hope we'll emphasize this evening for all of you is that you really are the chief storyteller in the process. It's true in series television. In a certain way, the writers are the king in a certain sense. They've created the show. And as a director, you do have to serve the vision of the showrunner, and you are, you know, getting tremendous amount of stuff, you know, given to you to accept. Okay, these are the actors, this is the setting, this is what happened before, this is the story we're going to tell. but you have tremendous power as the director to affect the storytelling. And one of the things I believe is you have to find a way to connect to it. One of the things I say a lot is, where I go by, is that if I don't find a way to care about the story I'm telling, I can't really make anybody else care about it. I have to access my own resources. So I'm going on a little longer, Rowan, than maybe you intended, but I grew to really love the medium, and I love the opportunity to, as I say, enter different worlds, because every show has its own world. Every series has its own way of looking at things, its own visual language, its own tone. And it's wonderful to sensitize yourself to that, to immerse yourself in that, and then make it your own. So I feel very, very lucky about that. And I love finding wonderful shows to work on.
Well, you've certainly done that. And by the way, there's a couple of people in the chat box who have seen your film. They did their homework. And so before we sort of get properly stuck in, let's just at the top sort of clarify what, on a practical level, what are some of the differences and similarities between directing a film and directing an episode of series television? Obviously, you talked about working with a showrunner, but sort of how do those two roles differ, and how are they the same?
Yeah, let me talk about it, and let me also emphasize the theme of our talk here, which is leadership, isn't that kind of it, and running a set? Because one thing that is really not different is that aspect of it. Once you get on the set, you are the director, and it's very, very similar, far more similar than it's not, directing for a feature film or directing a television show. Because when you come on the set as the director, you are the one who's the leader. You are the one in command. And I want to say, just let me take a minute here just to say, I don't want anybody to get intimidated thinking, well, I don't feel I'm commanding. You don't have to be commanding to be in command. What I mean by that is you have to develop a relationship to the story you're telling. You have to take responsibility for the story you're telling. You have to know it. And we'll get into maybe a little bit what that means to know it, because a story isn't simply what happens. A story is really the meaning that you give it. It's like, you're letting people know with every choice you make, what is at issue? What is going on? You can say the same lines, actors can say the same lines, but if they're not understanding really what it's about on a below the surface level, no one else will. So you as the director take responsibility for that. And in television, one of the differences is that you have far less time than you might on a feature film to tell the story, and to time simply spent on each scene that you're directing. So that's why it's especially important that you really are prepared. You know, again, what story you want to tell. You've thought long and hard about, and this is true in features too. I think most, there's so much more alike about directing features and directing television than what is different about those two. But this is a key one, which is you have less time. And so you have to be better prepared. And by being better prepared, it doesn't mean you enforce upon everybody, just do it this way. It's going to, you're going to go here and stand there when he says that and she does that. It's like, that's not really it. You do have to have staging in mind. You do have to, figure out where you want the actors to be and all that. But I have found it's much better if you can be flexible, so that when you show up on the day and people have other ideas, you can respond to them. But by being prepared, you're better able to tell whether someone else's idea helps the storytelling or takes away from the storytelling. But you as the director are that person who decides, is it better or not? Do I go with that idea or not? It's like, you want to respect your collaborators. You want as much input as you can get, but you don't want to give over responsibility for making that decision about what works best.
Mm.
And that's a big challenge. I mean, when you guys are making your own films, you likely don't have that problem because you're probably working with your friends and it's less pressure situation, and it's your film, so you get to do what you want. But when you walk on a professional set, it can be intimidating, and and you do want to respect what other people bring to it, but you still want to take responsibility. Some other differences between feature films and television is, when a feature film is developed, often it's developed by the director with the writer. So the director might have a lot more input at the very early stages of the idea being conceived and developed. And the director can usually give a lot more input and can point out where he or she wants the emphasis to be. But in a television show, we as a director of an episode come in very late to the process. The script has already been developed. And as I was saying earlier, you're really coming into what they call an existing franchise, a world that is generally, unless it's in its very first early stages of its first season, it's been going on for a while. And the one who really has the most authority is the writer, showrunner. The creator of the show is usually that person. And you have to respect that. But one thing people get confused by is some people just think a director of an episode of a series is just a kind of traffic cop. That's the kind of term I hate. It's just not accurate. Any director who comes in thinking that's what they're doing is not a very good director, because the script that you get it's just words on a page. You can't, it's like your job is to bring it alive. Your job is to make sure the actors are embodying exactly what they have to embody and pointing them to where the emphasis should be in every particular scene. So, even though you're serving someone else's vision in one way of thinking of it, I regard that as an opportunity. I regard that as a challenge and an opportunity. I mentioned earlier how one of the reasons I love directing series television is I get to grow myself. I get to kind of see in a new way. It's like when I approach a new show and I'll watch previous episodes and I'll see how they use the camera and what kind of framing they use. And, it's like a show, maybe some of you guys know, I'd never directed it, but it's a good example because it's a very distinctive camera style, is Mr. Robot. That show came on and it's like, it just jumped at me like, wow, that's interesting. It's like they'll do this really wide angle shot and have the person's face just in the lower corner of the screen talking. And it's like, usually it's like you get frames like what you're probably looking at me now, right in the center of the frame, and, frame for my face, but what's the subjective feeling you get watching that? What mood does it put you in? What does it make you associate to? What kind of mental, emotional state does it put you in? All of those choices, the choices affect all of those things. So as a director, you want to become sensitive to the question. The way I like to think of it is, how does this make me feel? That's what I'd recommend to all of you in almost everything you're doing in your own work is, it's kind of intimidating. You're entering the world of filmmaking and it seems like there's a right way to do it. And am I doing it the right way and all that? Some of those things you have to study. You have to study what's getting communicated and what the history of it is and what the rules are. But never lose sight. My advice is never to lose sight of the fact that what's most important is how you feel about something that you watch, not like what's the right choice. What's the choice that feels right to you? And so we're just always, that's all we really have as storytellers, is ourselves. Hopefully we get on good shows with good material and we got tremendous help in that regard. And, and if you have really an actor with great charisma, that's great too. That's helping it along. It's not like you're doing the performance, you're not. But you have to attend to, even when you have a star when you're working with, you have to be very responsive to how their performance affects you. I'm watching something and I've had a lot of experiences really great actors, very famous actors, and we'll rehearse a scene or they'll do a take or two, and I'm watching it and I think, gee, I'm really not being affected in the way I want to be affected here. And then you've got to, hopefully some of you will confront this problem in your future when you're maybe working with big stars, but you have to take responsibility even with them to come up and what they call adjust them, give them a note. And then that's a whole other set of skills to develop, is how to convey a note in a way that can be heard and can be received and not feel like criticism to the actor, and get their, cooperation and buy-in. So those are a few thoughts that come to mind. Feel free to, Rowan, follow up if
I will definitely.
Yeah.
There's so much in there that I will follow up on. Certainly, we'll talk a bit more about working with actors and how that showrunner relationship works and sort of get the best out of it. And we'll also talk about the sort of practical prep that you do before you get onto set. But before we do that, let's just talk about, so when you first get your episode delivered and you've got your script, what's your process of trying to work out, well, what is this really about, like beyond the words on the page, like what is the meaning that I'm trying to convey? How do you approach that?
So in my work, and this may be different from a lot of what you guys out there are working on, you may be writing your own scripts, and because I know when you start out, that's kind of something you need to do probably, and some of you aspire to probably becoming auteurs and writing your own material and going off and directing it, and more power to you. That's great. I think a lot of what I'm going to say applies to those kind of efforts as well, because once you get something down on the page, you're dealing with something that's kind of other, it's outside of you. And then it becomes a relationship. You have a relationship with the material, even if it originally came from you, you're dealing with something that's going to exist on its own. We're creating something that didn't exist before, and it's not us. It may come from us, but at a certain point you want it to work. So you'll have a relationship to whatever you start working on. And that's maybe a good way to think in terms of the analogy, what it's like when I get a piece of material. What happens is, I'll get sent a script. Okay, now, first of all, I've hopefully had an opportunity to do some preparation in advance of even getting my script before I officially come on the project. I try to watch as many of the shows as possible, so I really can get a sense of the world. Okay, what's this world I'm entering? And usually I've pursued shows that I already like, so I know something about them. And when I'm fortunate to get hired for them, I usually know something about it. But sometimes, I'm offered something and I'm intrigued and I don't know much about it, but I'll go and I'll take a flyer and I'll do it. So I want to immerse in the show and see what's going on. Then, and in series, it's like there's a time lapse. You film something and I just finished a job on a series that we were finishing up the 5th season, and I was hired to do an episode in the 6th season. And I just finished doing that. And I finished directing in the 9th episode. None of them have aired yet because the 6th season isn't going to start until January. So I couldn't watch previous shows, but I will make a point of reading the scripts that lead up to it. So I know where the characters are and I can kind of know what I'm reading. Okay, but I get the piece of material. And one thing I like to do is just read it at first, not trying to figure out, how would I do this? How would I do that? I don't want to be anxious. Because there's another directing clue, I think, that you need to kind of remember, is that when you direct, I think it's very important to first know you're the storyteller, you're telling a story, but also keep a part of your brain as audience. It's like I try to be both, okay, I'm a director here, but I'm also the audience. How am I experiencing this? So that, for example, when you start directing, a lot of times, you know a lot more about the story than the audience does. And you can sometimes make a mistake in thinking something is understandable because you know so much more. The audience only knows what you tell them or show them or allow them to kind of think about and kind of infer. And it's like, so if you're not aware of being an audience at the same time that you're the director, you might not be sensitized. What do I have to tell the audience to prepare them for this particular moment? I have to give I have to maybe provide a little more sense of a backstory, or I might have to give them a sense of even just where they are. It's like if you cut from one scene to another scene, and the environment will affect, of course, everybody's behavior, and you'll evaluate behavior based on the environment. I mean, if I had someone just outside that door right now, and I don't want them to hear what I'm saying, you know, I might talk a certain way, or I might speak in code because they're hearing me, you know. But if you didn't know there was anybody outside that door, none of that would make sense. So there's a lot so you got to be an audience. I mean, I know it because I read the script, but you haven't read the script. You're just seeing. So if I don't have a shot that shows you that there's someone out there or something like that, it's going to not be understood. So try to be aware of what the audience knows each time you're evaluating a moment. And okay, so I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place, but what I'm trying to say is I like this, reading the script for the first time. It's my chance to be the audience. Don't be the director too quickly. You know what I mean? You just read it and just see what's affecting me. Now, reading a script is very different from watching it as a film. And that's what you're being asked to do. That's what I'm being asked to do. So I know it's going to be probably a thinner experience. I'm not going to feel fully everything I would expect to feel with the finished product. And that's what I'm being called upon to do, is how do I flesh it out? How do I give blood and bones and flesh to a story? But I try to read the story, imagining it, and just kind of just let it wash over me. I don't ask myself to have answers too quickly. That was something early in my career I got in a lot of trouble with, because I was so insecure about, you know, am I going to do a good job? Are people going to think I know what I'm doing? That I felt I had to have answers too quickly. I had to come off like I know so much. And that can really close you off from being an open channel to what it closes you off from learning. It closes you off from, you got to admit what you don't know, because until you can admit that, no answers will come, because you're not even saying there's a question, right? Okay, so I try to let the script wash over me, just kind of experience it. And then after I read it, I try to just, again, how did that make me feel? I try to really look inside and see what was interesting in that story. Well, I was completely bored by, pages 12 to 25. I don't know. I was kind of lost. I'll probably have to read it again and see, did I miss something? Because I didn't get it. I really loved this exchange between these two characters. That really sort of sparked something in me. So, and then I try to think, okay, so what is this story about? What do I think it's about? And I'll start to make connections. I'll start to, analyze it as kind of I don't want it to be an intimidating word, but just all that is to say is, what struck me, what interested me. And then I'll try to, figure out what I think the writer's intentions were. Okay, so I've gone through that. I've experienced it myself as best I can. And then I reread it, and I'll start to think about making more specific connections. The second reading is always really good, because now I know where the story goes. Now let me reread this first scene between these two characters, knowing where it's going to go. I may see more nuance in that. I may see more subtlety. I may get clues that I wasn't able to pick up on because I didn't know where it was just an open space to me. So I'll make those kind of connections, and then I'll start to draw thematic ideas. What is it about? And then beyond that, I'm saying, and what interests me? Okay, I see what they're trying to do. What interests me? How do I connect to this? And how do I serve this story that they're telling in a way that I can, care about it? So that's kind of the first process when I read it. And then as soon as I get into the room with start the official prep, I try to, I should say also, I identify challenges then, because it's like there's going to be production challenges. So a script might have a huge stunt sequence that's going to be difficult. It's going to be exciting. I can imagine it as I read it, but making it is a whole different thing. So, I'll think, okay, this is something, as soon as I start my prep, I'm going to have to meet with the stunt coordinator. I'm going to have to meet with the production designer. I'm going to have to meet with all the people that I'm going to need help from to kind of fashion, the the help I'll need to tell this story well, to do this stunt safely, to make it exciting, to work with the cameraman. I'll see that's a challenge. I'll see another thing is like, wow, there's a lot of scenes here, and I know we only have 8 days to film it. Scheduling is going to be a real challenge, and how can I better start thinking, simply about how I'm going to cover things, or I'm going to need to have a discussion about getting more time to do it, or these are the things that I start getting alerted to what are the challenges, the particular challenges. I'll also develop a sense of, I'll start to think about as I get deeper into the characters. And I should say, now let's say I've already started my prep period. So now I'm meeting the people who are helping. And I like to, first of all, go to the writers and really try to get from them, don't worry about looking stupid, but really try to get from them, okay, tell me everything you can about what your hopes are for this episode, and the story. Let's sit down and really, and most television shows have a meeting, they call it the tone meeting, where you get this opportunity to talk about every scene. And I like to really pick the brains of the writers, even if I know the answers, or I think I know the answers. I want to see, what did you think this scene was about? Whose point of view was it? What story were you trying to tell with this scene? Where does it fit in the overall story? What did you want everyone to emerge with after this exchange between these two characters? Where did you feel like they turn in? And as they share with me the deeper layers of the meaning of the story, I can engage with them. I can see if it makes sense to me. I can have my own ideas, which I can share with them. I can make suggestions to them. And even though the script is written, you still have an opportunity to, share ideas. It's not a great there's not great opportunity to change things because it's so fast. It's going so fast. But surprisingly, there are ways you can affect even that. And then I'll, go to the various departments and say to the wardrobe people, for example, like, I think this character is really a bit depressed at this moment in the story. So I would say, for example, when you think about how she should be dressed, I think, or I would avoid maybe bright colors. It's like, because I know when I'm not feeling great, I don't want to be flashy. I don't want to put on my best looking shirt with bright colors because I don't want that kind of attention. So you try to share the vision of the story with the various departments, who then have their own areas of expertise. Therefore, I'm not I know that, costumers can be just brilliant in what they come up with, and come up with ideas that I would never think of that are great. Or a production designer will create a set that is just, fantastic at showing what this character would have really chosen to have in his or her environment. So I don't know, maybe I've talked enough about that one.
No, that's all fantastic, and I suppose I'm just going to nudge you to sort of keep going along the same line. What other prep would you do before you get to set? Because you mentioned that once you're on set, it's a very fast-moving train, and the best thing you can do is be as prepped as possible.
Okay, so I've kind of talked about two different kinds of prep. One is before you even start, with the things you can do to get ready for getting your script, and that is in a television show anyway. I'm talking about. And that is to get as familiar as you can with the world of the show. It's like, so that you can hit the ground running when you get the script, what you're plugging into. So that's one thing. But then, when you have your week and a half, let's say that's what it is, to prepare an episode, you do all the things I was trying to talk about a minute ago. Another thing you need to do, is you need to work with your assistant director and what's called a line producer or the production manager and schedule the show. Now that's very important because, every show, has a budget, and every show has a, what they call a pattern budget, which is that at the beginning of the year, they might have 12 episodes and they work out how much money Showtime or HBO has given them, or FX or whatever. We have this pot of money. And it usually comes from talking to the network saying, we think we're going to need 10 days to shoot every one of our episodes. Those are the more higher end shows that can afford 10 days, maybe even 11 days. The lower end ones might take 8 days. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, very cheaply done and fun, would take, that's only a half an hour, it might take 3 days, but you say, okay, we think we need 10 days generally, some may be, some may be 11, some may be 9, but really the average is going to be 10 days. And we only want to work 12-hour days. That's a big thing now in the film industry in the United States. I don't know about in Europe, but it's people are really clamoring for more reasonable hours because you can really work long hours in any of these jobs. So you say, okay, we have 10, 12-hour days to finish our episode, shoot our episode. Okay, so that becomes something we have to see. Does this script, can it be shot well in the style of the show in 10 days at 12 hours a day? So we start a process during our prep period, and there's not much time. We have to do several things. We have to, first of all, pick locations. Now most shows will have what they call permanent sets, like the house of the main lead person or the workplace of the main lead person. But most every show has other scenes, like they're going to go out and they're going to meet somebody at a racetrack, or they're going to go to the market and they're going to outdoor market scene where they meet so-and-so. Well, those things you have to find, and you have to do location scouting. So we'll go out and there's a location in television. One of the great things is they have, a lot of support. There's the whole department. So and in films too, of course, but we have a locations department, and they've probably been given a heads up that we're going to need to find an open air marketplace in the next episode. So they've scouted some, and then, you'll have a discussion maybe with your production designer and say, we're going to look, and maybe there'll be some, but it's going to be difficult to really do a practical open air market because people are in business and there's 50 different stalls, and we have to negotiate with 50 different people, and we have to shut them down for the half a day we want to be there. What about creating our own open air market? What if we found that's another option. So, they're looking for real open air markets. But then another angle might be, let's look for, a nice scenic area, maybe by water or something that would be beautiful photographically, by a river or something that would be nice to see. And we'll create these little cheap stalls, which shouldn't be too hard to do. But then we got to pay for all that produce coming in and all that other thing. All these things are trade-offs. You figure it out, but you pick your locations, you try to figure out a schedule, and then it's a big jigsaw puzzle to kind of schedule it. And what I always want is the assistant director, who is the one who's in charge in scheduling. I want them to, and this has to happen very quickly because you're going to be shooting in about 8 days, and you're doing, not to mention, you're having to cast the supporting roles. You're having to figure out how you want to shoot things. You're having to break down the script and do all your inner work in terms of what really is happening. So everything is happening. You're multitasking. Can be scary. Don't be too intimidated. You do have some help, and hopefully you won't be thrown into the deep end right away, which is also why I really recommend go make films. Go make short films. Just get as conversant with the project process as you can. But then when all the elements seem to be in place, then the assistant director presents me with a schedule. And I always ask them, I say, don't just jam everything into 10, 12-hour days. Let's estimate what we really need to shoot that scene. It's like, if something is a really difficult scene, like one kind of scene that's really challenging in a certain way, I'll describe in a minute, is a dinner table scene. If you have a dinner table scene with like 8 people around a dinner table, well, it's relatively simple, right? Nobody's moving. So that's true. But the kind of angles you need to get everybody's look. So when they're looking at the person across their table from them, when they're looking to the person that way, when they're looking at the person that way, often you just have to keep doing so many different angles to get everybody's looks correct that, it can be hell shooting it. It can be so time consuming. So even though let's say it's a 3-page scene, and they might normally give, 3 hours to shoot it or 4 hours to shoot it. You say, I'm going to need more than that because I have all this additional coverage to shoot. And anyway, you look at this and then you see where the problems are, and you see that a realistic schedule for this script might be 11 days, and 2 of those days have to be 14 hours. So you want to know this before, you want to know this going in so you're set up to succeed, so that you can then go to the producers and say, you know, we need either more time or we need some help with rewriting the script. So you want to position yourself to succeed. Anyway, I'm obsessing on scheduling. I don't know why. That's not the only thing here, but
Very
there's a
important.
lot of logistical things to solve, and that's before you even set foot on the set. The thing you want to do when you set foot on the set is know you have a good chance at success. You don't want to enter something with saying, I'm never going to finish the schedule. It's going to be impossible. You know, Rowan, I'm just thinking you mentioned that clip from Snowfall. This might be a time to talk about that. So in the third season, there's a show on FX. I don't know if it airs in England. I imagine it does. It's called Snowfall. It's about the advent of the beginning of the crack cocaine epidemic in the United States in the early 80s, mid 80s, 1980s. And in this particular, and I was directing the first episode of the third season, and it just had so many things. So it's like I had read the script and I said, wow, it's really exciting. But then I started to break down everything that had to happen. And there were so many different huge sequences. There was the opening, which itself, you know, only was about 2 minutes long, but it had to do with a policeman who's the father of the romantic interest, has a daughter who's the romantic interest of the drug dealer, I should say protagonist, anti-hero, I guess, who's becoming the biggest drug dealer in South Central LA. Her father is a cop, and he's trying to stop this thing from getting out of control. And it's just written. He's just kind of driving through the streets and seeing the change in the culture from the previous season, where you know there's a few more drug dealers that he's noticing out on the streets, and then he's driving along, and then he stops and he sees a drug deal happening in a car window in another street, and he parks his car and he approaches that person, and there's a drug addict trying to buy some crack from the drug dealer in the car, and he sees the cop coming and he wants to take off, but the young girl who hasn't got her crack yet and she's addicted doesn't want to give up, so she jumps in the car window trying to get her crack, and he's tearing off with her body half out of the car, screaming down the street. The cop runs after goes back to his car, chases her. She catapults off the car. He gets to her, and she runs off, and he chases her some more. And then when he finally finds her, has lit up the crack she's gotten, and she doesn't care about anything else. And the cop looks at her and feels like, this is the beginning of the third season. He sees, oh, this drug is worse than anything I've ever seen, because this woman just risked her life, and now to get this, she's so addicted. And he understands we're in for a hell of a ride. And so that was just the first scene. Now there were many, many other really big scenes. I had a nighttime shootout. I had, just all kinds of action and also really good scenes. I recommend it to you guys if you want to see it. It's episode 1 of the third season of Snowfall. And but I had to prep this show. And so we come in and it was like, okay, they even gave me another day because they said, this is a big episode. So we'll give you 11 days instead of 10, I think 9 days instead of 8, something crazy like that. And so I go through the whole prep period trying to figure out all these things. And then before we started, come to the producers and say, okay, I suggest we cut this and add this and do this and the other. And the writers say yes or no. And finally, we got to a point where I thought the schedule was kind of makeable, but only if we could do that scene I just described to you in one day, because I had so much else to do. Now, some of you, I imagine, don't have much experience because but others of you have, and you can imagine, first of all, as soon as you're driving a car, it's more difficult. You're moving as soon as and also you're covering great distances. So the company is in one place and where the car ends is another place. Stunts are dangerous. This one was particularly dangerous because I wanted to film it in an exciting way, but I'm going to have a real human being hanging out the car. There were all kinds of story points that had to be communicated. Just establishing the very opening where it's like, okay, we're entering a new season. What would be a great opening shot that would establish this guy driving through the neighborhood? And we want to see the neighbors, and we want to be with him before he stops and sees the drug deal going down. And then I needed to be inside the car where the drug deal was going on and shift point of view completely, so that you had the dealer's point of view, seeing the other guy coming and wanting to throw the woman off of get away from her so he's not about to be arrested. And then her jumping in the car, and then her taking a terrible fall, and then her running off, and then a chase on the ground and all that. And as we were doing all this, I was really trying to make it work in our schedule before we even got there. I realized it's too much. We can't do it. And it happened to be a day like time of year like now, where the days are very short. So we only had like 8 hours of daylight. And to do all of this work was just too much. So the first thing I realized is, well, let's focus on story. What's the main story? The story is that we definitely want to introduce the tenor of that this is a new season and that something has changed, and we're going to see that through the eyes of the policeman. I got to see that. And we also have to see a horrific stunt where you really think this woman is so crazed to get this crack that she's willing to risk her life, is going to jump in this car. I wanted to feel the jeopardy she was in, so I needed plenty of angles to be exciting. And then she's going to fall off. And then she's going to run and give chase, and that's going to take hours to do. It's like she's going to run away. They even wrote something, she's going to break off an antenna from a car to make a crack pipe and stuff the crack into that. And she's going to be, well, you won't know that unless we do what's called insert shots, tight shots. You have to see, okay, so, and that takes 20 minutes to get a camera there, have the thing, someone run by, break off the thing. Then as she's running at full speed, I'd have to see her packing this thing to know what she was doing. And I realized, do we really need all that to get the impact of this? I mean, what if we had her take such a hard fall that she would look like she was dead or unconscious? And then when the policeman got up to her, we could see not only that she must be in terrible pain, but she doesn't care at all about that. And she's just lighting this crack. I mean, if we did it just there, we'd save 3 or 4 hours of filming, and we could focus on the more important story points. And maybe then we could finish it in a day. And the producer said, okay, well, okay, I'm sorry to give that up, but okay, if you think so. And then you get to the day. So I made it in what was kind of manageable, but even that, the day I showed up to shoot that, the assistant director told me, I looked at your shots, because they'll do a shot list on a stunt in particular. She says, I think we need, I think we'll get through about 2/3 of your shots before the sun goes down. And which means I need another day. And I knew that wasn't going to work. So I said, well, I hear what you're saying. I think we can get it. And so I just had to go into a different gear, and I had to really be very precise in my communicating, telling people all the time, anticipate what's next, get ready for the next thing. We're doing this now, but get ready for the next thing, which a good assistant director should be doing as well. And this one did it too. And we filmed the stunt first, and we filmed it, and it took, and we left. And also in filming, you're trying to get the best position for the sun, which would also help you shoot quickly, because some of you who have experienced making things may be familiar with the idea that, you try to get backlight as much as you can, because that's the most beautiful. And it's the easiest to light, where the sun, if you're shooting towards the sun, and then people just tend to look better than a lot of just bright light right on their faces. But we were going to be shooting all day, so the sun was going to be moving all day. But I knew for that opening shot that I described, I wanted that to be with the sun at the end of the day. So anyway, I'm giving you a lot of details. I think it turned out really well. We did get it in just the nick of time, and maybe we can show that clip now, the snowfall clip.
Absolutely.
Trashman didn't get my trash today. Oh, I help the air. But that's what makes the world go round. The ups and downs of carousel. Changing people's hands around. Go underground, young.
It's all there.
Come on now, you know how this works.
Just give me the rock.
Bitch, this only 9.
No, it's 10.
You saying I can't count?
Just count it again.
Hey, get out of
Give
here.
me the rock and I'll leave.
Hey,
Oh my fucking
Hey, walk away.
But that's what makes the world go round. The ups and downs of carousel. Changing people's heads around. Go underground, young man. People make the world go.
Wonderful. It's so interesting to watch it, having seen you talk about the mechanics of how you made it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes by quickly. I mean, it's like that's one thing that I hope people will get from my book. I write about this kind of thing that, you watch a show and it just, oh, that happened, but, to make it happen and to make it and to me, it's always about story, serving the story. That's what I really want everybody to really be impressed with in your work, is that you're telling a story. Now, you can make a lot of cool looking shots, but if they don't go together in a way to get those moments, like the key moments that I tried to, it's like, first we established this policeman kind of going through the neighborhood. He cares about this neighborhood. He's seeing, he's trying to, save it, or he's trying to, protect it. And he sees this drug deal happening, and then he runs after. And then at the end, I hope you got the sense, in the context of the show, it would be much clearer that, oh my God, this young woman did this, put herself at such terrible risk, and she's couldn't care less at the moment. After all that we just went through, she's got this blissful look on her face. And the sense is, it's okay, it's starting the season. How am I going to combat this drug? And, hopefully those things were implied, even if you're not thinking about it consciously, it's in you've had the experience as a viewer, you watch it. And so there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great example of how you create meaning beyond what's on the page.
Right.
But speaking of what's on the page, let's talk a little bit about working with actors. And you mentioned briefly at the top. What are some tips for sort of bringing out the best in actors, whether that's sort of giving notes, to try and help their performance sort of serve a story?
Yeah. I had a great advantage, because when I first started thinking about what I wanted to do after I realized I had no idea in my mid-20s, I flirted with the idea. I spent about 3 years trying to be an actor. And this is great training for you as a director. I can't stress enough that, if you have no experience acting, I really recommend you take an acting class, because there's nothing like being given a scene, and it's not you, and it's not, it's like, it's not your life situation, but you got to play this scene. Okay, how do I get into it? And not just like, do some bad acting and like be really mad, or, how can I really find the emotional life within myself? How can I imagine these circumstances what would be the circumstances where I would feel these things this character has to feel? And by having the experience of acting, you start to get a sense of A, how difficult it is, B, how kind of courageous it is. It's like we'd all like to play the hero maybe, but most acting is not playing a hero. It's playing a vulnerable human being really being challenged. And I think that's why one of the reasons we love to go to the movies and watch great performances is we want to see actors experience something we'd rather never feel ourselves, but we'd like to see what it would be like. And, or we'd like to see, is there another side? If I really do feel, my life is threatened, or I get rejected by someone I love, can I survive that? Can they survive it? Let me watch. But you're not going to be moved if you don't really feel like put themselves in that situation. So take an acting class. It'll help you understand the challenges. It'll develop empathy and compassion for people who are trying to act. And maybe most importantly, it'll help acquaint you, if you're trying to do it yourself, to what would be helpful to me. Come and says, no, that's not it. You got to burst into tears at that moment. Yeah, easy for you to say. How do I burst into tears? So it's like, well, you can burst. Let's think about it. What do you care? What can you, sometimes you'll call on, now actors have had training, so they've got their own techniques, but one of them is often trying to come up with things in the actor's own life that they can relate to. Oh yeah, I remember what that was like. Did you ever suffer a very serious breakup? Yeah. Did you ever get rejected really by someone? Yeah. And as soon as they start to talk it, they're remembering it, and it activates something in themselves. Yeah, well, that's what this character is going. And it's even worse than that. It's that they've lost so-and-so. And then the actor's own imagination gets, triggered, and their natural empathy and compassion. So now you rarely have time to kind of go through that lengthy kind of a thing on a television show, but you're dealing, fortunately, with actors who are used to this. So they're looking for help. But the way I'd recommend my book. I wrote a chapter on it. I'm not going to be able to here to do service to it, but a few things. One is, first of all, what I said, respect the actors, know that it's not easy to do what you're being asked to do. Secondly, be as real with them as you can, because you want them to be real. So be as honest as you can about what you think the story is about. Be as honest as you can with them about what you saw and what they're doing, not in a critical way, but maybe saying, I saw how you did the last scene. I'd like to suggest you maybe think about it a little differently. You want to give an actor an intention. If they don't, or they'll probably come up with something themselves, but real behavior is always motivated, and if you look in your own life, everything we do, you may not be aware of it, but it's motivated by something you want or you desire, or that can be trying to avoid something. I don't want to put myself in that situation. No, I'm not going to go there. Well, that's an intention. I'm not going to go there, and then there are obstacles. Well, wait a minute, if I don't go there, I'm never going to get what I want in life. Oh, that's a problem. It's now I have another intention that's in conflict with this other intention. So as soon as an actor starts thinking in those terms, they get activated. The thing which doesn't activate anybody is to say what they call the result. Just be really sad or be really angry. Well, no, it's like, if you're angry, it's like, I'm seeing somebody abusing that child over there. I'm going to stop that, because that's eliciting in me outrage, something that, instead of like just acting outraged, what is it touching in you? So it's such a big subject. It really doesn't, we're not going to have a 5-minute answer on this, but basically acting is really trying to find truth. It's really trying to find the truth and the deeper way of what's going on in the scene. So you can give the actor, let them think about, and this is where it's so important to know the story you're telling and caring about the story you're telling, because that's maybe the best way I've found to really get an actor to connect to it. It's like you can share what's happening at this moment in the story. And if you're caring about it, even helping the actor with, I want you to imagine the circumstances here. And then you start filling in for the actor what those circumstances might be, which also comes from that original question. How do I feel about something? What circumstances would create in me the feeling I want that actor to have? And then you start to think, well, if I felt something I deeply cared about was being not seen, or I was being ignored by, someone that I was cared about and they just weren't even seeing me, how would I feel? It's like, okay, so you say, well, I want you to feel in discussion with this professor that, say that's the character, that he's not even seeing you. You're coming in with a real question and he's changing this. He's wanting to get out. He's looking at his watch. How would you feel about that? You know, and you start, you know, finding whatever the story gives you to use. And then the other thing is every actor is different and you gotta, is a human being, and you just gotta try to connect to them as human beings and stay connected to yourself. I feel like these are a lot of cliches I'm saying, so I don't know, but it's a
No, this
lifelong
is
process to learn this. It's not easy. Just respect your actors but respect the story you're telling also, and try to get them to participate in the story you're telling, because usually there's the clues, there's the connections they'll be able to make.
This is all absolutely wonderful, and I'm going to open up. We've got so many audience questions, but just before I do that, I've just got one sort of. You mentioned right at the top about you know, sort of leadership style and the difference between sort of being in command and sort of being commanding. Can you just expand a little bit on sort of, you know, being a leader on set and sort of setting the tone and how you approach that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's such a funny dilemma, because I'm on the one hand, I'm telling you guys to be true to your own feelings for what's going on inside you. And there's going to be stress, and there's going to be times you don't know. And there's going to be times you want to be rescued by somebody else and you don't want to be in this position. And I don't have the answers. You got to know that that's what's going on in yourself. And I'm not saying pretend you don't feel those things, but the thing you got to resist is like, resist giving up. Resist. It's like, you got to accept responsibility. It's like, okay, I may not have the answers now, but I want the answers. And you might have to ask for help. So what do you think? Ask for other people's opinions, but not in a way that's like, save me. What do you think we should do? I'll just do whatever you say. You know, that people read, this person is not taking responsibility. So why would I follow this person anywhere? If you accept the responsibility you have, like and sometimes it's a good thing to tell yourself, I'm here for a reason. I got hired for a reason. And I may be having a lot of self-doubts right now, but others believed in me. And I know that these doubts just happen. I personally have a meditation practice. I recommend that to people, because when you're on your own, it gives you an ability to kind of just watch your mind and watch the thoughts that come in and not give them authority. Just see, that's thought. You know, there's a thought here that I'm going to screw up. Okay, that's a thought. Let that go. I have a job to do. So those are some of the things, but I think the more you accept responsibility for this and do your best to stay authentic and vulnerable in yourself, but you're not giving over to anybody. You're accepting that I'm the storyteller here. And it's like, yes, I want your opinion. You want your collaborators' opinions, but hold that stance but only you can decide if it's the right opinion. If they don't answer it, okay, thank them very much, but I'm going to go somewhere else. And if you can stay true to yourself, if you can stay connected to yourself, often you'll find you will have the answer. Just give yourself a moment, you know, do your best not to panic, you know, do your best not to pretend you're other than you are, you know, especially when you're starting out. That's not easy. I write in my book of how my first job, one of my very first jobs, I got into a lot of trouble because I had to pretend to others I knew a lot more than I did. And, you know, it got me in a lot of trouble because I was even pretending to myself. But the proof is in the pudding. I mean, we got a thing to make here. And if it's not going to work because I don't have the answers and I haven't done the difficult work of admitting what I don't know, which is part of the journey to finding out what you do know and what would make it work, you're going to have a price to pay at the end of the day. So, you know that you're there for a reason, care about your story. That will carry you a long way. You know, if you've done the work in prep to really figure out why this is an important story to tell and why each scene contributes to that story being told well, you have a reason for being there, a reason for holding space and taking command. And again, it doesn't mean ordering people around. It means just knowing you have something important to do here.
That's brilliant. Okay, so now we're going to get stuck into this pile of questions. So we've got a couple about really early stages in your career and sort of before you can get to a point where you're being hired on TV shows. And a couple of questions about the role of the AD and the sort of AD departments. I know you'd worked as an assistant director. Is that a good route into directing?
Good question. I mean, I have so much compassion and empathy for what young people face getting started, because it seems like there's no two stories are alike. Everybody kind of finds their own way. I think the best advice I have to people is to just knock on every door, pursue everything, be willing to deal with rejection. Whatever you can think of that will better prepare you to be a good director, or whatever lead that comes to you, pursue it. You don't know really what's going to be the avenue in necessarily. And don't be shy to kind of have course corrections. It's like, now I became an assistant director because I was in film school. I didn't have a thesis film I wanted to make. I thought, well, I'll learn about directing by becoming an assistant director. And I did learn a lot, and I worked on a lot of, big pictures. I was a second assistant director on E.T., the extraterrestrial. So I worked with some great directors and all that, but I didn't get hired to direct because I had been an assistant director. That gave me confidence, that taught me a lot about, the process. But I had to go make a film, and it impressed people. And in those days, I got offered a feature film. That was my first job, Stephen King's Silver Bullet. And, so I don't, but I do have friends. I do know people who have become assistant directors and did get to direct. Great minority. Very few people make that change because they're different jobs. You do different things. That's the great thing about making films yourself, because then you can show somebody, I directed this. Would you take a chance on me? But you're not asking them to fly blind. And it's like, yeah, I have no idea whether you can direct or not. I saw you work pretty well with the actors there. Okay, that gives you a better leg up. But I don't know the simple answer to how to get that first job. Can you remind me of what other sides of the question were, though?
No, it was mostly that.
Yeah,
It was specific to
right.
AD and whether that's a good route.
Yeah, I think that's a great job in itself, by the way. It's a good career. You might think about that as well. It can be you can make creative contributions, not the same level, of course, as being a director. Because the best ADs, by the way, in fact, the people who do best at every job in this business, I think, are storytellers. They know they want to contribute to the story. Like I was saying, like the director of photography is going to, do better work if they're thinking about how something should look to advance the story. As I said, the costumers are going to be better at their job if they're thinking about the character and what would that character wear in this story. And even assistant directors thinking about schedule, for example, they'll say, if I were directing this to tell this story, I think it needs this particular scene needs more attention than that scene because it's really dealing with the emotional heart of the episode, and it might need time for the actors to find that. So I'm going to schedule this so that has an extra hour to shoot, because they're storytellers. So think about that, and recognize too that you can be a storyteller in many, many ways in this business. You don't have to be a director. The director is a great job, and I wish you all success if that's what you want to pursue. But know that, serve story, always serve story, and serve your own storytelling abilities, and the rest hopefully will take care of itself.
That's a wonderful manifesto. So now we've got a question from Holly asking about how important it is to have camera experience when directing TV, and sort of an understanding of different kinds of lenses and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's it, great question, Holly. And it's yes, it's important. And yes, almost everybody approaches it, their first jobs, not knowing enough about it. So it's not like you're going to be evaluated about, it's not like you don't have help. You do. And in television shows, there's certain things. One thing distinct about television shows versus a feature film is that the look has been established. And by the look, I mean the way things are photographed, the way frames are composed, the way, the cameras are generally set. Like I said, Mr. Robot would have a certain thing, some shows have what's called a very long lens look, which is like a telephoto lens, which tends to, it's like, think of a telescope. You don't see a lot of the environment around, but you're seeing, things brought up, layered, it's like, it looks like everything's, like shots, imagine, New York City, there's often a shot of like teeming masses walking on a sidewalk. And it's like, those are usually with long lenses because it collapses everybody. It makes them look all the same on the same plane when they really might be 10 feet apart, each of them, but you feel like they're all walking towards you. And then a wide lens. Some shows see things just through those long lenses, and others seeing really wide lenses, like Westerns often, like where you want to see the landscape, so that when you're shooting a close-up of somebody, like right now, my lens is a wide lens, so that it's seeing my close-up, but it's also seeing, like 12 feet across my office back there. But, if it were a long lens, it would soften my features. It would be more flattering to me, but you'd only see maybe that much behind me. But I'd be the same size, but you'd only see that because so there's a lot of technical things that you'll learn through experience. But the one thing I say in my book, I lead off my chapter on camera. It's called The Language of Camera. And I'd say this point, which I'm going to repeat to you guys, which is there's a lot you can learn. You can evolve you can learn from experience. You can learn from watching films. You can learn from a lot of things. But the one thing you can't learn from anybody else is how you see, what's important to you, what affects you in a certain way. So that's an important guide when you're figuring out camera. It's easy to get lost in the technical thing, like, what should I use? What's the right lens for this? Well, it's only right if it creates in you the feeling you want for that particular moment. So when you get suggestions from a DOP or an operator, it's like they can show you something and you can say, that looks great. I really like the way it looks. It's very aesthetic. But then you think, okay, now what's the story? Do I want to see Dan at this moment? Sorry for my phone ringing there. Do I want to see Dan in this moment with all those books behind him, and then looking into his inner hallway back there with that arch? Is that too distracting? Yeah, it's a little distracting. I really want to just focus on what he's saying. So give me a lens that's the same size like that, but just where I'm only seeing that side of him, because I really want to focus on his words. That, those are the kind of questions that'll help you, that no one else teaches you. But it's not one or the other. You will be helped when you start to learn what a camera is capable of doing and how it can create emotional states that are very subjective and really serve the story. So it's important. Let me just say that. But it's no more important than how you feel about the image you see.
Okay, I've got a question from Rosa, and I'm going to add a little addendum to it. So the question is, what was one of the biggest challenges for you to overcome during your career? And my addendum is sort of how do you get over that? How do you recover from a challenge?
Okay, well, I've had many of them. But maybe I'll talk about my early experiences, which I kind of alluded to a little bit. When I started directing, one of my first jobs on a series was the show Miami Vice, which was a big hit in the 80s. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers know it by reputation, and they made a movie of it and all that. But it was really kind of the cool show, and everybody, and I was only hired to do it because I had one job. It was a feature film. And they said, oh, we just hire feature directors. We don't want any of those television people, And it's funny because what I know now about filmmaking after doing, 200 hours of television, compared to what I knew then, having done, an hour and a half feature, is so much greater. But, there was this snobbery. Oh, you're only good if if you've done a feature. And I came on and I was really, I was overwhelmed, and it was a very difficult experience for me. I did get help. I did have the benefit of knowing I was going to rely on myself, but I didn't have a lot of confidence, and it was not a happy experience. And at the end of the day, I think people, it was also very stressful because everybody's trying to look for someone to blame. And when a director doesn't have confidence and makes a few choices that someone can easily say, well, it doesn't work, it's not my fault, it's that guy's fault who, didn't, it can create a very stressful environment. And that was for me. And I knew that I wasn't going to get a good recommendation for my next job. And, and it was, who else could they call the next job? So I didn't know if I was going to get another job at all. It was difficult, but I stayed with it. Okay. So I stayed with it because I was committed to what I wanted to do. And after several months, I got a second job, and that was on a show called, I write about this in the second chapter. It's called The School of Hard Knocks. And, I got a second job on a show at the time that was very popular called Beauty and the Beast. And that was a whole different set. But so what I learned from the first job was I hadn't been prepared well enough. I had thought I was going to just come in and it would just come to me, or I would, but I didn't want to admit to what I didn't really know. And the second job, I said, okay, I'm going to admit what I don't know, and I'm going to figure out how I want to see things. And I just spent hours by myself on the sets in prep. And I didn't care if I looked like a novice and people would say, oh, look at him. He needs so much time to figure stuff out. I didn't care about any of that. And really that was more of an inner voice. It wasn't anybody else. It was my own critical voice. Superego is another way of thinking of it, just judging, oh, what are you doing here? If you need so much time to figure this out, maybe you should think of another profession. Those thoughts, go sit over there by the door while I figure this out. And I figured out a whole thing, and it went beautifully. And the showrunners were sending me love letters during all the first few days of dailies. That's the footage they'd see. And they asked me midway through my shoot if I'd clear my schedule to do the most important episode coming up next. Got very full of myself and felt great. Wow, this is fantastic. And then, like the second to last day, suddenly the temperature changed. The hot water tap was turned off. The cold water thing just came on. They wouldn't even answer my calls. They were furious at me. I didn't understand why. And I learned later that, and this was a lesson into human nature, which is, this particular showrunner was very scared about what he had agreed to let me do, the way we had agreed the story should be told, because it was a departure. It was a new thing. And he suddenly, I believed, got really cold feet and just did what people do sometimes in stressful situations, became a jerk and started blaming. So here was a second straight job where suddenly I'm getting all this acrimony and it's terrible and this, that, and the other. And, now I felt like I'll never work again because I have two jobs in a row that people, but I stayed with it. And I said, okay, it was a bad experience, but let me really figure out what was bad about it. And I really identified, well, it really wasn't my fault. The first time was kind of my fault, and I learned from it. This one really wasn't my fault. In fact, I learned a lot about how to take my time and figure out my connection to story. And I figured that would help me in future jobs. And it did, big time. And finally, a few months, I was out of work for quite a while. And after several months, I got hired finally for a third job. And it was, funnily enough, from a writer showrunner who had worked for this other guy and said, I used to work for him. He's nuts. He's accused me of the same thing he accused you of. I've seen him do it a million times. I didn't care a word about what he said. I liked your work. So I got this third job. I'm going to button this up. It's a long story. But in the third job, I did all the same prep work. And again, I started getting these love letters. It's like, oh my God, this is the most beautiful stuff we've ever seen. And as I was walking to the set, I heard it on my phone message. I found myself saying to myself, boy, am I glad I had that experience on Beauty and the Beast, because I sure know not to take any of that seriously. And I stopped myself and I said, oh my God, did I just say I was glad for that experience? I had gone into close to a full-on depression about what my career was going to be and how maybe I had screwed up. And I only came through it. And I was actually glad for that, because now it had equipped me with an awareness that don't take compliments too quickly. Don't, just keep your head down and do your work, do what you can. People are going to have all kinds of responses. And I felt fine to go through, and I realized what a blessing. This thing that seemed like a nightmare to me was actually one of the critical learning experiences I've ever had.
That's wonderful. That's really, really great. What an important lesson in sort of resilience and putting ego aside. That's really inspiring. So we have to wrap up in a minute, but I'm going to try and squeeze one question in, and hopefully it's quite an easy, quick one to answer. So after the show is shot, how important is the director's involvement in the editing process?
Very good question. In series television, well, here's I assume it's true in England. In America, we have the Directors Guild of America, and they've fought very hard for creative rights. One of the most important ones of which is that the director is entitled to what's called the director's cut, so edit. So what happens after I finish an episode is the editor puts the footage together and gets it into something called the editor's cut, which is a first pass, but it's more than just first pass. It's really their best sense of how the show works. They haven't had much time to work on it, but they present it to the director. And then on an hour-long television show, I get 4 days to work with the editor before the producers can see anything. That's critical, because the phrase that comes to mind is you don't get a second chance at a first impression. And people can look at something, and the way things are edited, I bet your questioner knows, is absolutely critical. A show can feel terrible and fall flat on its face only because it wasn't edited well, because the moments didn't land, because they weren't arranged. Like I was saying earlier, you hadn't been prepared for certain moments, and they just go by and you don't even feel them. So I get 4 days to cut it, and then I turn it in. Now, that's really as far as it goes. The producers are not obligated to show the show in the way I've done it. They can go in and change it, but at least I've given them my best shot, my best sense of how it works. And that's it. Features can be a little different, but even features, with very few exceptions, the producer can change a director's cut also.
This has been absolutely wonderful, Dan. Thank you so much for your time, for being so candid and generous with your insights and experience. And I just want to ask before we end, is there a show that you're enjoying very much at the moment as a viewer, as a fan, that you can recommend to people?
Yeah, well, it's a big hit. I love the HBO show Succession. I'd love to direct one. I was offered one in the earlier season. I couldn't do it, and I'm just praying I get to invited back. But I think that's a brilliant show. It's kind of like about the Rupert Murdoch empire at Fox, with kind of departing from that. I think that's great. But there's so many great shows around the world. Recently, I watched a great French one, The Bureau. I thought was great. A Swedish show called The Restaurant. I thought was great. So one of Britain, I love Sex Education. I just think that's just a brilliant show. It sure looks like the end of the third season means the end of the series. I can't imagine it coming back for a fourth, the way they tied it all up, but what a brilliant show that is. So
it's wonderful. It's really, really great. Well, we'll make sure Jesse gets to watch this on YouTube, Jesse Armstrong, and maybe he can hire you for, for Succession.
That would be fantastic.
But yeah, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful session, and I would highly recommend Dan's book. If you liked what you've heard, the book is lots more of the same. Brilliant practical advice and sort of philosophical insights into the role of a director. Thank you, Dan. Thanks.
Thank
everyone.
you very much. Thank you, Rowan.
Thank you so much, Dan. Those were such great insights. Really loved listening to you talking. Thank you, Rowan, for hosting. And
Thank
thank you
you.
everyone for attending today. It's great to see so many young people attend and get so engaged in the chat box with asking questions. We had nearly 100 questions. So that was really, really, really positive. I'm sorry to everyone whose questions we were not able to answer. And I know that a lot of you have asked us about watching this session again because you found it so inspiring. We have recorded it. It will be uploaded to the BFI YouTube channel this week. If you just keep an eye out on the Film Academy social channels, we will do posts across Twitter, Instagram, as soon as the session is up on YouTube. So you will be able to rewatch it as many times as you want. And I hope, Dan, that you had a chance to now open the chat box and to see all the amazing comments that you've received today. People have been so thankful for your insight. So thank you again. Before you go, everyone, we would love to know what you thought of today's session and if there are any improvements that you would like us to make for our future online events. Noel will post a link to a short survey in the chat box. If you could take a couple of minutes to answer it, Noel has just done it. If you could take a couple of minutes to let us know what you thought, that would be amazing. We do look at all your feedback and we take it on board. And as a final thing, as many of you know, we've made our labs hybrid. So this Saturday, we are continuing with this theme of directing, and we are hosting a workshop on directing actors at BFI South Bank. That's at 12:30 p.m. on Saturday. So for those of you who have signed up for that workshop, we'll see you then. And for the rest of you who can't make it on Saturday, keep an eye out on the Film Academy social channels, and we will be posting details about our December lab soon. So you'll be able to join us for that, hopefully. Thank you everyone again for joining today, and have a lovely evening, and see you all soon. Bye.